The most closely watched thing today is whether EU leaders will call for some kind of ceasefire. This was already discussed by EU foreign ministers earlier this week, but there is intense disagreement on this. One EU official told me yesterday these discussions have been quite emotional. So there seems to be some consensus forming around the word pause, humanitarian pause. That's the phrase that's now in the draft conclusions for this summit. So many countries, including Spain, France, Ireland, are pushing for a ceasefire, but countries including Germany and Austria are resisting that because they say it would tie Israel's hands and mean that it would only benefit Hamas because Hamas could regroup during that time. They're going to be discussing this idea of a pause. Now, some countries want the language to go further, but Germany and Austria are concerned that even the word pause would suggest that this is just a replacement for ceasefire. One thing they're going to discuss today is adding the letter S to the end of that word and make it pauses. That makes it seem even more temporary. Maybe Israel stops bombings for an hour, for 2 hours, so humanitarian aid can go in. The risk here is that the EU is going to end up looking quite foolish, spending hours today arguing about one letter of when people are dying in Gaza. And at the end of the day, whatever they conclude today, Israel is unlikely to take their advice, whether they call for a ceasefire or a humanitarian pause. However, EU officials have told me it's important for the EU to go on the record with this today because it will influence the United States. Last week, the US vetoed a UN resolution calling for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, and it's thought that if the EU takes this stance today, it probably won't influence Israel, but it will influence Washington, which can influence Israel. These discussions are expected to get quite heated today, so we'll see where that goes.